So I'm Jean from Spark and Bloom. I am a brand designer and illustrator working for ethical businesses. And this is episode 3 of the Sparking Talk. I'm here with Rita to talk about ecopsychology and deep ecology. Hi, Rita. I'm excited to have you here.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me. Excited
Yeah.
to be here too.
That's awesome. So, can you talk to us a little bit about you and what is deep ecology?
Right. Uh, okay, so I'm Rita and I'm from Portugal. I've lived a little bit all over the globe, but now I'm back in Portugal. And I've been a psychologist for around 20 years and an eco-psychologist for 6 years now. And yeah, that came kind of all together for me, deep ecology, active hope, like everything. And then I started studying eco-psychology. So, okay, to tell you a little
Yeah.
bit about deep ecology.
Yeah, I'd love to learn
Um,
about it.
so this is just something that I'm like absolutely passionate about. I love it like to the core of my being. And deep ecology actually started a really long time ago. Like it started in the 70s when there was like a really strong impulse in the activist movement, and there like the big questions that we're addressing now with the environment, they were like starting to
Hmm.
take to become more aware of in the 70s, like okay, the 60s, but then in the 70s a lot of these movements consolidated more. And
Hmm.
that's when deep ecology was coined by a Norwegian called Arne Nice,
Hmm.
who was like a really hardcore environmentalist and a mountaineer. So it was interesting that he had been a little bit all over the world seeing mountains because he was out in nature a lot, and he could see that there were these threads of taking care of the land, that people cared for the land where they were, and he was aware that this was going to be like something that we as people had to do everywhere.
Hmm.
So he started to really work on this notion that as a lot of activism would address like the direct things that were happening. So there is this problem with cutting too many of these trees, and we will go and we will block this from happening. And that's great, it's such an important thing to do, but he could see from some kind of perspective that that would not be enough to maintain an ecological way of like an environment where we can actually continue to live.
Hmm.
So he defined those kind of actions as a more shallow ecology and a more shallow, not in a, I don't mean in this in any bad way, or it's just like as the opposite of deep,
Right, right.
because then he saw that a deep ecology and a deep activism would be one that addresses the actual roots that are causing these problems. So
Mhm.
not just that those trees are being cut, it's very important to stop that, but then what is it that's making people think it's okay to just go and see trees as a resource to earn more money? Like what are the underlying values that is making all of this mess being
Right,
created? Right,
right,
so that
right.
established a sense of a need for a big ecological revolution, right? So as we have had the agricultural revolution and then the industrial
Hmm.
revolution, he was really keen on starting an environmental revolution, something that would be really transforming humans from living in this growth, like this everything is about growing the economy, and actually being about everything developing a really healthy environment.
Right, right.
And so that's deep ecology, and that's how it's kind of got started. And then there's another amazing activist from California called Joanna Macy,
Hmm.
and she knew about deep ecology, and then she had lived in India, and she lived in Darjeeling, where she met a lot of Tibetan monks. So she started to see how one thing could inform the other, how activism could actually connect very well with Tibetan Buddhism, and how there were some threads that were just about a deeper underlying feeling of nourishing life and sustaining life. And she created this kind of workshops that she would do around the world, At some point, she was working a lot with the people who lived in Chernobyl after the disaster. So
Okay.
she could see very firsthand the things, the consequences that can happen when we actually don't take care of the planet, and things can really go very wrong. And
Right.
she needed something that would sustain people that were also in the activism world, because she was watching a lot of people going through getting very involved in actions and then reaching burnout. And then she was feeling, but life is stronger than that. So there must be something that we can do that takes people out of that kind of energy depletion, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she developed this kind of system that very organically grew from her workshops, that she could see a spiral that happened. And this spiral is like a journey. And it's something that she definitely brought from Tibetan Buddhism, is that we would start the work in developing gratitude, right? And working on gratitude really like nourishes the field. It just makes everything so kind of hosted in love,
Higher.
and
Yes.
therefore it's just like so kind of yeah, just
Open.
very nourishing.
Yeah.
And then from that point, then we would directly address our pain for the world. So
Mm-hmm.
there was this underlying question in the environmental movement in the 70s, that, and also being a lot connected with psychologists that were asking this question: when the world is in pain, who listens,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if the earth is suffering, if the rivers are polluted, if there's no fresh air, who listens to this pain, right?
Right.
And actually, it was starting to appear a lot also in psychologist offices, people that were suffering from a kind of anxiety that didn't have a cause, like a direct cause in their lives. Like if nothing traumatic had happened, there was nothing that would justify that kind of sadness or anxiety. So this also made a link of people seeing, okay, sometimes what a person is individually feeling is actually coming from feeling a bigger connection with the world.
Mm-hmm.
So Joanna Macy felt exactly the same thing in her workshops. So she decided to give people time to really go into this pain, so that we could, as humans, grieve together and express that pain. So this is really a work where we get to like grieve together, to cry, to scream if we need to, like to really feel the anger of this mess that we are in, like this disaster that the states
Mm-hmm.
of things is, it can be so despairing at times.
Right.
And so from there, from instead of trying to kind of run away from it and staying in it, gives so much strength, and especially doing that together and acknowledging that we're not alone on this mission, that we're actually a strong community of people doing this together.
Yeah.
That creates a strength that really sustains action in a way that then we do not get to burnout.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then the next step from that is to see things with new eyes. So I can be looking at the exact same world crisis, but because I've strengthened it so much with gratitude and with really addressing the pain, then I feel ready and I can see, okay, so I can see where I want to go and I can take my own actions to get to that place, right?
Right.
So this is a very empowering point. And then also with the strength of community, then the next step is going forth. So I go forth with all of that inbuilt strength. And this then, it first became called the work that reconnects, because it's actually very directly reconnecting us with other people, with ourselves, and with the whole of life. And then at some point in one of her workshops in Scotland, Joanna Macy met Chris Johnston as a student, and they really got along and they started to work together.
Mm-hmm.
So they then developed the work into something that is now called active hope.
Mm-hmm.
And active hope is really about like, it can be tricky to see the word hope there, but it's not about just kind of sitting back and hoping for things to go a certain way. It's the total opposite of that. It's really taking on the responsibility to make hope possible. So it's really seeing, okay, things are in a really bad state now. And we don't want to go there. We want to go a different way. And we are going to actively take our choices and make our choices and make our actions in a way that they make it possible for that space of hope to exist. Right? So it's really empowering.
Yeah, it sounds like,
Yes.
yeah, you're not passive. It's active. You're there with it. Yeah.
Exactly. That's it. And it's really because one of the things that can be really risky when we start to really see the actual state of things, it can be so overwhelming. It can take us to that place of deep anxiety, or like almost the opposite, like the state of really numbing our feelings, of really like deadening any option of responding to the crisis, and that is so dangerous.
Of what
Yes,
we need.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
So
I
yeah,
heard
so
psychologists talk about the fact that people have more and more anxiety about the climate disaster we are living in, and that it's a big issue because they see paralysis in people instead of action. So how do we get to transform that anxiety into active hope?
yes, exactly. Yeah, this happens so much now. It's really incredible because if we look at things in perspective, it's a very adaptive response to the actual state of things, right? It's natural that as human beings who are part of this planet, facing the actual states of the world, it's a natural thing because it's like we are seeing our home being burned out down, right? So it's very natural to be in a state of anxiety with the climate and with the world situation in general. So things that can be like with active hope, it's a journey that it's really outlined. So it's really working on gratitude, then addressing the pain for the world together. It's really important, that part of doing it together, because sometimes when we are really in that anxiety and when we're really feeling blocked by the overwhelm with the world crisis, is that also we are feeling really alone, really disconnected, and already giving the step to being in a workshop or to do this work in private sessions, it's already a step towards connection. And that can sometimes just for itself already work a lot. And then it's also step by step. Like, for example, I mix a lot of ecopsychology with active hope because I really feel that nourishing any kind of relationship with the living world that's not human is something that really establishes the grounds for health, and it really helps to heal anxiety. Because
Yeah.
what was happening around the same time, sorry,
No,
Jen,
no.
go.
I was going to talk about, anthropocentrism, that like in
Yeah.
the society we live here, we live now in a capitalist economy, we consider the human as being superior to other species, as or even to living beings. And yeah, I feel like deep ecology is trying to reconsider
Yes.
that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's it. It's really aiming at a democracy of all species, right? Because when we feel so connected with the rest of the living world, it does feel very silly that we have once felt so superior that we could control everything else and that it was just about us, right?
Yeah.
So yes, it's definitely trying to reestablish that natural order of things somehow. There has never been a time on this planet where human beings felt this disconnected from everything else that's alive. This is a very strange way of living that is definitely not something we are ready for. So it really adds so much stress to even our bodies, right? But like definitely to our psyche, that we feel so unnaturally disconnected from the whole of life.
Right.
And that is very much the work of ecopsychology, because at the same time that that's active hope and the work that reconnects was being established, there was also this movement of ecopsychology, And that is very much like it was like the term itself was coined by Theodore Rosnak. And that was, he was working on it also in the 70s, but then it came out as a book called The Voice of the Earth
Mm.
in 92. It came out. There were small publications before, but as a book, it came out in 92. And ecopsychology is really about creating a psychology that addresses not the individual alone, just as a one separate isolated thing,
Mhm.
but the individual in a system and in all this like wider, bigger environment. And it's really not seeing the individual as having their own personal problems, as if they were a completely different thing from the climate situation and the state of the water and all of that, because they're very, very connected. Like the fluids in my body, the blood, everything that's water based in my body is not so disconnected from the river, right, or from the ocean.
Yeah.
So it's really aiming at reestablishing that connection with the rest of the living systems, because it's not natural to us as humans to live so disconnected as it became the norm in Western societies, at least. I mean, a bit all over the world now, but very much so in Western societies, that we are so disconnected, right? If we look at a lot of ancient languages, there are always words that could be translated to English as interbeing, but in most of Western languages, we don't actually have such a word, and even the use of interbeing, it's new, coming from Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Buddhist teacher. But this notion that it's not that I'm here and I'm Rita and that's it, and I'm like isolated in some bubble. I'm interbeing with every single thing around me. I mean, I think it's very clear with the air, like who am I if I'm not this air passing through, right? So the idea of separation is really something we have abused so much, because I'm not really here existing as an individual separate from the rest of things. There's an interconnectedness that is really everywhere. And ecopsychology is about restoring that. And that can be done like very, very directly by really going to nature and connecting with trees and connecting with the water and connecting with mountains. And it can also be done like if it's not possible to do that, it can also be done it can even be done like indoors, right? And just recreating nature in our minds and being more aware of the elements that we have. Like a lot of us have things made of wood in the house, so that's coming from trees, it's coming from roots, it's coming from the ground. It's just
Even the
being more
air.
and more aware. And the air, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's ecopsychology in a nutshell.
Yeah. Wow, that's so many concepts and notions. That's super interesting to learn more about all of these. Um, how do you um, how do you help, or how could entrepreneurs use this concept, ecopreneurs in particular, because they are in these questions all the time, because they're passionate about uh, the environment and how to do a better job and how to, create more responsibly and stuff. And so there's a lot mentally to deal with. And so how could they integrate these concepts in their business or in their personal lives to feel better?
Right. I love this question. I think it's so beautiful, because ultimately that's the goal, right? How to actually embody this and to apply it in what we do. So I think one thing that I find it's really important is to really expand the notion of community. So, for example, for an entrepreneur who is creating a product or thinking of a service, instead of just thinking on a more human sphere, really expanding the vision to include all species, or other species at least,
Mm-hmm.
and elements of nature, and to really consider before making a choice, or creating a product or creating a service, considering how that choice is going to affect other species as well. So
Mm-hmm.
not just the human sphere, but really opening it up. And the other thing I think is important is to also making those choices considering a bigger timeline, and even timelines that may not be linear, and knowing that hundreds of centuries from now, even such a long time from now,
Mm-hmm.
if humanity is to sustain itself, there are going to be human beings who are going to be looking back at the decisions that we made right now,
Mm-hmm.
and how good or how bad their life is at that time is going to be directly affected by what we decide right now.
Right.
So for me, always having that kind of huge timeline in mind is something that I find really important.
Right.
Then also, definitely always grounding everything in gratitude, I
Mm.
think is just something that is, it's a no-brainer. Like it just has good effects. And I really, really mean this, because sometimes when we're in that state that we're looking at the world and we know all the things that are so wrong, like we're definitely at a time when like everything, like so many things are so messed up, it can be very difficult. However, if we pay attention, we can always see things that we are grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of energy really, really grounding that very strongly is something that I have only ever seen bringing benefits. So I think that's like an important part of it. The other part, I think,
Sorry.
no, go ahead.
I think it also has a ripple effect, the gratitude, being grateful every day, because um, it's not just for us, it's also for the people around us and for nature around us. And we just become more aware of what we have as opposed to what we're aiming for. And I think that's important, yeah, to be well grounded, you said it, in the present and what's going on.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and it's so incredible how, even if we have like a very bad day,
Hmm.
it's like how grateful I am that I have this air to breathe,
Yeah,
right? It's just, there is always something to be grateful for. So it's such an incredible energy to bring to things. It's
yeah.
really special. I think something else that might not be so easy, or so maybe so tempting, but I think it's really important, is when we do actually feel the state of overwhelm, or like for example, for myself, I get really sad when I think of polar bears.
Mhm.
It's one of those things that really touches me, and i can I can try to not feel that, right? I can be like, oh no, but there's this other thing I can direct my attention to, and it feels better.
Mhm.
I think that actually blocks something that wants to happen through me. So my suggestion is to actually sit with that transformative feeling, that it can be so painful, and somehow from that pain, it's something new might come. Like I can have a new insight, I can have a new idea that actually comes from the staying there with that difficult feeling, instead of trying to jump to something else. So I think that's also important.
Yeah, that's a great advice.
Yeah, and I know it's not easy. Like
No.
it's really not an easy thing.
Yeah.
The other thing I think is really like very, very simple, but can, I've seen it make a lot of changes in people's lives, and definitely on my own, if that's true, is trying to really connect with the earth, like with soil,
Mm,
really connect with
yeah.
soil.
Yeah.
And even if some for someone who even cannot leave the house, or has more difficulty walking or something, to have earth at home, to really have soil that one can touch and smell, and to feel that connection.
Yeah.
Because the state of our contemporary world can make it so that we could actually even forget that we come from there. That's like something that we're also made of is earth. So I think that's a really important thing to always keep in our life, that connection, of course, to the other elements as well. And some people will be more called to one, others to another one. Yeah, I feel that that smell of the earth, the connection to the earth, is something that really is very nourishing.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially in this way, that to then turn things into projects or to turn it into products, like it's also about earth. So I find that it's a very simple thing to do, that I find brings great results.
I just I moved back to Paris, which is a big city, and in a neighborhood where there's not a lot of parks accessible. But I just got some planters and hangers that I can put on my window. And just this Sunday, I bought some plants and some ground, soil to put my planters. And I was so happy to have my hands in the dirt. And I actually didn't like clean my nails really well, just to have dirty nails and have the feel, like the souvenirs of having done that. It was so good. Yeah, and so easy.
It's so easy. Yes, so accessible, right? Yes, and so important. Oh, I love that. I can just feel it.
Yeah, I was really happy. I'm still really happy.
Yes, that's great. Okay, and two more things I find are really important.
Yeah.
I mean, there are many, but I'm trying to kind of say the ones that I think are like very accessible and that people can directly do them. One is that we're not individual, like as human beings, we're not hardwired to be separate from other human beings. So I would say that everything gets better if we do it in community. So even if someone is a solopreneur, still really connecting with community, because we are beings that really we're made for that. So also is establishing those relationships and honoring relationships with other human beings is something that I think is really, really, I think it became even revolutionary to do it when it got to a point where we're being so taken in the opposite direction, because it's not the same thing to connect with someone through a phone. So actually meeting other human beings and to really feel another beating heart close by, right? I think that is really important to remember. And I think this probably further down the line, it will be more and more important with other generations.
Yeah.
And the other thing is to always ground purpose, like to really, apart from the purpose that one probably has for their business or for their project, to also see what purpose can this serve in the healing of the world and in the maintaining of our species, to really ground that purpose, that we are called as people who are aware of the state of the world. We are kind of asked to rise up to the occasion and get a bigger view of purpose, and keeping that purpose in mind, like to really live true to this purpose and keep doing the actions that we know can be life affirming. I really think that is like the biggest challenge of our time.
Yeah, for sure. And especially these days with the pandemic on, in addition to all of this.
Yes,
the community having a human presence, and this, I think it did reconnect us in a way, because we've had to understand that we are indeed all connected. We're forming a net. And so, yeah,
it's incredible how this situation really it's expanded the awareness of so many of the things that were wrong. That's really it's kind of, it awoke us to things that were really important to see, right? And it's like now we're better prepared to face the things that we need to change. Definitely. Wow, great.
Well, so many advice and so many things to keep in mind for when it's getting hard and we need to recenter ourselves. Thank you so much for all these insights. That was really great. Do you have any services or offers or website that people can go check out and see how you can help them?
Yes. Yeah, I'm now working on all of these things because I love them so much. I was like, yes, I just have to put more of this out there.
Yeah.
So yes, I have my website. So it's Rita Tojal. So RITATOJAL.com. And I'm currently doing eco-psychology sessions one-on-one on online. We do it on Zoom. And then I also do active hope courses, but I have one just happening now, and I still don't know when I'll have the next one. And then the next thing I'll have is a nature connection course that will be an evergreen course. So it will be recordings with a lot of activities to do. And that will come out this year. So if you want to have updates on that, you can subscribe to my newsletter, and I'll have information about that. And then I also have something like for people who go through all the services I have and still don't find that there's something there that's already the thing for them. I have this other option that is to book a session, and I tailor make the session for the person, which is something I also love to do.
Yeah.
So yes.
That's awesome. Okay, super custom.
Yes, totally.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here and for sharing all of this with us. This was, yeah, really insightful, and I can see your face lit up when you talk about it, which is really, yeah, I feel very connected. So that's yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me and for doing this work that you do with this community. It's really beautiful to be part of it. And yeah, nature is just fascinating. So I hope that I can leave that message to connect more deeply with other forms of being.
Yeah, well, I think you passed it. Thank you so much, Rita.
Thank you. Thank you.
This was episode 3 of the Sparking Talk with Rita Tojal about deep ecology and psychoecology. I'm Jean. I run Spark and Bloom, a brand design and illustration studio, and I love making these talks. I love to chat with passionate people about ecology, business, branding, and how we can do things better. So if you want to be on the podcast, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm always open to meet new people and talk about what they're passionate about. Cheers.